Right, so we've been doing quite a few episodes featuring musicians from Kolkata of late, which is kind of ironic considering my somewhat fleeting and rather troublesome relationship with my birth city. That being said, the relevance of today's conversation does not deserve any form of collateral damage as a result of the same. This conversation will speak for itself, becoming a bit of a habit for me to say that with regards to most of these episodes, but yeah. Bodhi and I do have to go back as well, as the episode notes will indicate. He is a musician who is probably all set to make history, but like I said, let the conversation do the talking so you can decide for yourself. I would, however, like to remind you that this is an independent show. It's brought to you by the Holistic Musician Academy and everynowheremusic.com, both of which are pretty much me. So if you'd like to support this endeavor, please go join our mailing list. Please go to holisticmusicianacademy.com. We have a free course for songwriters up right now. It's for a limited period. Additionally, you probably don't know this, but all podcast listeners get a 25% discount on any courses on my coaching website. In case this is news to you, go check out the link on the episode notes. Okay, without much further ado, Bodhisattwa Ghosh.
Hello.
Hey man, you doing okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
FYI, we are already on tape. Does that work for you?
Yes, okay. That's okay.
Because I am legally obliged to let you know when I start recording.
Yeah, sure. I started recording as well.
Nice. Hello, fellow beings. Welcome to Tapasya Loading, a safe space to attempt honest, raw, and authentic conversation in homage to the ancient act of stoking a sacred fire. How are you doing today, man? It's good to connect again.
Yeah, doing fine.
Excellent. I usually start off this podcast with a bit of a reminiscence on where I meet my guests. You and I, we have a bit of a history, although it's quite a bit in the past, but we do have a bit of a history.
Yeah, that's right.
We have been sporadically on tour on some pretty random projects, really, come to think of it. Random but meaningful in their own way.
Of course.
When was the first time? Was it with Tonmai Bose's Tal Tantra or was it Kendraka? My memory fails.
I think it was Kendraka. You had come to Calcutta and we had played together.
Was that the first time?
That was the first time, actually. Yeah. I think in 2010, sometime in 2010.
We did connect on one of your tours in Switzerland as well. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, exactly. That was 2011. Yeah, that was July in Basel.
Yeah, that was actually really good fun.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, thanks for having me around. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, same here.
Cheers, man. Well, I'd like to start off with, you embody a very specific role in the history of contemporary music in Kolkata. I would go as far to say you're probably one of the, you were third generation of contemporary guitar players in the Indian landscape, or would you say fourth or second? What's your take on it?
I don't know. I would say third generation because you had people like Carlton Keto.
Right.
For this stuff. Yeah, and then you had people like Amit Datto, and then it's me.
Right. Okay, yeah.
So I think third generation, yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that. That's actually something I was a little hazy on. So yeah, it's third generation. And it's, with a musical history as diverse and as complex with India's, or even Kolkata's or West Bengal's, it's not very easy to unpack the whole thing in a linear way. I don't know about you, but I don't think I'll be able to unpack it in a specifically linear way. But let's have a go, man. Where did your musical journey start? I know that's a very cliche kind of a question, but I can't think of a better place to start. So let's just do it. What's your earliest memory of music?
Oh, yeah. I have been listening to music since I was pretty much a baby. My earliest memories, I think that when I was around 2 years old, that's 1985. And I had, I was like a pretty bratty kid and I didn't eat, And so my mom used to put on Dark Side of the Moon, the LP. Nice. And I used to listen to that. And I would actually just shut up and eat. So that's my earliest memory.
Wait, so the Dark Side of the Moon was how your mom got you to eat your meals?
Yeah, that's true. That's very true, actually.
FYI, Dark Side of the Moon was my first serious album as well.
Wow.
So that's actually, that's actually one coincidence we definitely have in common. Yeah. no words to describe that album, really. That's really like a timeless masterpiece.
Yeah, it's pretty iconic. Yeah.
Definitely.
That's my earliest memory. Yeah, no, so that's about it. And, my father was a huge fan of, still is, a huge fan of, Hindustani classical music.
Beautiful.
And my mom, because she was studying at Jadavpur University, in masters in English literature and things like that. So she was pretty much a hippie. So I got exposed to on one hand, things like Simon and Garfunkel, Pink Floyd, Beatles, Led Zeppelin.
Nice.
And through my father, I got exposed to Vilas Khan, Nikhil Banerjee, Ravi Shankar, and eventually, Bhimsen Joshi, of course, how can I forget? So things like this,
Beautiful.
So I grew up in this kind of an environment. I was never really into, mainstream Indian music like Bollywood and things like that. So I used to listen to these things. And when I was around 15, I had a friend called Neil, who's right now in London. He's an NRI. And he used to bring, back in 97, 98, he used to bring all these mini discs and LDs and things like that of latest releases, like in England, Britain, like Oasis, Smashing Pumpkins, REM, things like that, like the Radiohead.
Nice. There are a couple of points I really want to focus in on a little to start off with. I think our generation, I'm not quite sure if we are the same generation. I'm 42. I can't remember. Are you? You're probably a generation.
I'm just 4 years younger to you.
Okay, so we are roughly the same generation. I think
roughly the same.
We our generation got to experience one of the last remnants of pre-globalized India, where access to music was still an enormous privilege.
Exactly. That's very right. Now it's...
and I think that lack of privilege has ended up being a privilege at this point.
Yeah, I would say, yeah. We used to be so excited that we used to dig into all the details, I think.
Exactly. The amount of... it kind of added a certain kind of... You had to be really passionate in that age to really pursue music. It was not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, you can say that.
It's not like you could just turn your phone on and just find out what a certain release sounds like or what a certain band in a certain part of the world sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that right now if you don't like a piece of music, after 30 seconds you'll just turn it off.
Yeah, totally with you, man.
And so what happened back then is that no matter how much, I bought a lot of really bad, or I would say albums that I don't like, but I ended up listening to each and every one of them because I bought it myself. So that investment was there. So music was very, very serious.
Yeah, with sense of value. It's interesting. Benny Rietveld, Santana's MD for almost 20 years now and bass player, was on this podcast recently, and he actually really enjoyed these stories. I pretty much told him a very similar kind of what you just referred to about, and it was quite a funny feeling telling him about how we'd really break a leg to find bootlegged versions of obscure releases of Santana. Even Santana records, for example, weren't always as easy.
Oh yeah.
It's also interesting, like these guys who would technically be referred to as, I don't know, pirates, music pirates or whatever. In the West, they'd probably be referred to as as curators and archivists, because that's actually what they were doing.
Yeah, that's true. Actually.
So it's very interesting how the whole nomenclature changes depending on the general narrative.
That's true.
Especially in this day and age, at a point where all of this music, for which people have gone to jail back in the day, is now all free. So, so moving on from that early phase, what was your first acquaintance with the guitar like? Do you remember your first guitar?
Oh, of course, absolutely. It cost 1,600 rupees. That's right now it would be 5,000 rupees.
Wow.
Yeah, that would be how many euros?
A little more than 50.
I don't have it right now with me. I have given it to Tanmay Bose as a token of appreciation. That's where it all started. I was least interested in learning theory and scales and all of that. All I wanted to do was play the songs that I love. Yeah, so I just picked up, went on the internet, which was a very nascent thing back then, on Netscape Navigator.
Wow.
I think, yeah. I downloaded chord charts of Beatles songs and mostly wrong, all these chords were. So that's how it started.
So at which point did you come up with the decision of becoming a professional musician?
Oh, that's a great question, actually.
Would you say it was the byproduct of the lifestyle you were already living, or was it like a epiphany wherein you said, "Hey, I'm going to do this," and that's it?
No, it was kind of an epiphany if you look at it that way. Because, like I said, I was playing with a rock band, and obviously I was studying in college as well. And because I was studying computer science, so that was always like my very serious, passionate hobby and things like that. But what actually happened is very interesting, TL, is that, there back in those times, and there used to be a lot of these jazz concerts in Calcutta. And people from the West used to come and perform, be it, European bands or American bands or things like that. And even people from Calcutta, like my teacher, Amit Datta, and Kochuda, obviously, Monojit Datta. So they used to play, and what happened is that I used to go to all these gigs, and I realized that I can't understand what they're playing. I mean, I have no idea what they're playing, and that kind of felt really bad. That why can't I get what they're playing? I can't understand anything. I like it, but I can't understand anything.
When you say I can't understand, would you say like the artistic statement they were making, or the technical things?
Both. The artistic sensibility as an audience, I really enjoyed it. But I wanted to understand exactly what they're playing. What rhythm is that? What scale is that? What are these chords? How are they, synchronizing together on this? What is this time signature? It's not 4/4. What is it? I can't get it. So things like this. So then I decided that, I really have to dig deeper into it, because I'm losing out on all the fun that these guys are having on stage. And as a musician, it's a shame that I don't understand any of these things, what they're doing. So that's why I kind of decided that, no, I have to do this full time. I cannot, do other things. I cannot get a day job, or I cannot work in my father's. I was working in my father's business back then.
Okay.
I was, working there, and so I said that, either if I continue this, then I won't be able to, first of all, concentrate on the business full time. I won't even be able to play guitar at a certain level. So I decided that, no, this is exactly what I want to do. And in 2008, I told my dad that, look, this is the thing. I mean, all your heroes, like, Virat Khan or Nikhil Banerjee or whoever they are, I mean, they dedicated their entire life to perfecting their craft. So I think I have to take that journey. And he understood. And he said, okay, do it. So that's when I really started, I went back to my teacher and said that, please teach me from the beginning. Like, how do I get into this kind of music?
That's really awesome.
So that's how I took the decision. And he said, okay, listen to these albums. John Coltrane, my favorite thing, Smile Stay was kind of blue, and, Herbie Hancock, Headhunters for more fusion stuff and things like that. So that's when I started digging deeper. And that's when I didn't used to practice that much before that. But from 2008 to 2013, I think I was practicing almost 8 to 10 hours a day. And I stopped listening to rock. I stopped listening to pop, anything. And I was just continuously listening to jazz and fusion.
Yeah, that's an interesting commonality that often exists between, I'm going to use the word, musicians who lay a lot of value on technical skills, that most of us seem to have had a phase where we stopped listening to, pop music, not popular music, but pop music, and just kind of concentrate on, like serious or intense or like complex music. And in hindsight, would you have done it the same way? Do you think that shunning pop music for a certain phase of your life was helpful?
I think it was helpful because, that's the kind of music I was listening to since I was a kid. And also when I picked up guitar, I was listening to, relatively simpler music or popularly appealing, like, the Beatles and things like that. I mean, which is more mainstream or more accessible. So I already loved it. It's not that, I didn't like it or anything like that. I mean, I will always be a Pink Floyd fan or a Led Zeppelin fan or even an Iron Maiden fan or an Oasis fan. So, but the thing is that I already, had a liking for that, and I was kind of familiar with that realm. And this realm, this fusion music or jazz or whatever you want to call it, it was alien to me. So I really had to concentrate fully on that just to have a basic understanding, okay, what's going on.
So coming out of your comfort zone.
Exactly. So I kind of shunned, the kind of music that I was comfortable with because it'll be there.
Gotcha.
I mean, I listen to it right now and I love it. I play in a rock band as well and I love it. But for that time, when I really wanted to get into more complex forms of music, I really first wanted to understand it for what it is.
Nice. Yeah,
and so I thought that, I should dedicate myself 100% to that until I at least have a basic understanding of what it's all about.
How did it feel in the beginning, diving into that alien zone where you felt like a newbie?
It was overwhelming. Because there was so much incredible stuff going on. And the more I started listening to these records, the more I felt like that I don't know anything. But I took up the challenge, that, okay, I have to start somewhere. And let's see what this is all about. And I got access to this amazing curriculum by Jamie Ebersol.
Nice.
So then I read the first chapter. I got it on PDF and MP3. I read the first chapter and I was very inspired, saying that, okay, I mean, it's not, that unreachable or that untouchable. You just have to take baby steps. So that's where I have had this swing backing track with drums, bass, and piano. It's just 3 chords: F minor, E flat minor, D minor. And so that's how I actually learned that, okay, there's a different way to pick your guitar, and that it's a different idiom and a different language to be able to swing. Even though it's something I knew. I mean, these Dorian modes, F Dorian, all of these, E flat, I knew these modes. But the way I was playing it was a very, guitar player rock influenced kind of things like Joe Satriani, Frank Gambale, that kind of thing. That was a different language. And over here, I had to completely adapt to a different sensibility. First of all, I had to stop bending. I had to stop doing these blues vibratos and things like that. I had to adapt to that language entirely. The scale that I was improvising on, this is the first, formative time that I'm talking in 2008. It was familiar to me and I kind of felt confident that, okay, it's actually not that difficult or not that unreachable. I can do it. So that's how it all started. Then I started obviously pestering my teacher for more lessons, more harmonic expansion. What do you do? There's a G7 chord. What all can you do after that? What are the outside notes? How do you play these outside notes? What is a 2-5-1? What is a 1-6-2-5? What are rhythm changes? And I kept digging deeper and deeper and deeper. And at the same time, I had met Bumpy, who was already a prolific player back then. And he said, okay, I want to do this jazz fusion band, Kendaka, you want to play? We have to rehearse very diligently. I said, okay, sure.
Tell us a little more about Bumpy. I mean, you and I probably know him by his more colloquial name, but maybe for our audiences, tell us a little more about this acquaintance.
Moinak Nath Chaudhary, Bumpy, he's a bass player from India and one of the finest musicians I've met. And because he had a very unique approach of playing bass. So that's what I loved about him, is that he had his own sound. And he developed a system where he's, studied under Hindustani and Carnatic classical musicians, and he developed his own technique, studying time signatures, rags, and things like that. So he kind of, I would say, treating the bass like a veena rather than just a bass guitar. I mean, obviously he had a solid background, and you played together in Orient Express.
Yeah, different lifetime, but indeed, yes.
A different lifetime, exactly. So that's how I knew him, as Orient Express's bass player, like this prolific bass player. But he also had this, over the years, he developed this sensibility where, he really made it an effort to sound like an Indian bass player on the global map. Mm-hmm. And that's what I really love about him. And his compositions I found very interesting, because they were not the kind of stuff that I was studying back then, because I was studying jazz standards. When I during that time in 2008. And he was like, okay, this is on a time cycle of 5.5. What the hell is a 5.5?
So what the hell is a 5.5? Explain to us.
So the way he taught me is that, it's very simple. It's 4 and 1.5. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So that's how, he taught me. So I asked him, and I think before rehearsal, we met a couple of hours before, and we sat down with a couple of beers. And then he kind of explained the rudiments of Konakul, the Carnatic South Indian counting system. And then I studied that. And I watched this video by Selva Ganesh and John McLaughlin called, I bought the DVD.
Oh yeah, me too.
Gateway to Rhythm.
Yeah, I remember that one.
That really helped me. And what really helped me more was like, I joined, tabla player Tanmay Bose's world music outfit, Tal Tantro. And over there, he was dropping bandishes and tihais at the blink of an eye.
Mm-hmm.
And when I joined that, I mean, I'm not part of it anymore. But when I joined that, that was another different world opening up, and I didn't know what to do with that. So in 2009, I parallelly was studying Hindustani classical as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I have Bumpy to thank for that, Moinak Nath Chaudhary, and we are great friends right now. He has his own thing, I have my own thing. But it was a very important turning point in my career, I think.
I'm trying to trace the trajectory of the journey you've had. So let me summarize, and please let me know if I'm doing a decent job till now. So here's a guy born in the heart of Kolkata to a somewhat artsy family, grows up listening to Dark Side of the Moon because that's the best way his mom can get him to eat his lunch. Buys an acoustic guitar, and turns out it's the only hobby, in contrast to karate and the rest of the stuff he's doing. It's the only hobby he sticks to, and eventually transitions to an electric guitar. Feels frustrated that bands from the West play music, the complexities of which he can't quite decipher, and digs deeper into jazz, starts getting mentored by Amit Dotto, and then meets Moinak Nath Chaudhary, starts getting in touch with his Indian roots, the rhythmic side, and moves on to start collaborating with the likes of Tanmay Bose. Have I summarized that clearly enough till now?
Yeah. Bingo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I do that because it is a pretty complex journey. I want to start honing in on how you started building your own voice and working on your own band.
Right.
The Bodhisattva Trio. When did that start happening? Because that's what we really want to dig into today.
Yeah, exactly. So this happened around 2011-12, where I thought that, because I was already in this system of challenging music for around 3 and a half years.
Mm-hmm. And
I thought that, apart from like playing in Kendraka, I started having a little bit of a footprint in the sound of the band.
Mm-hmm.
And the drummer, Jivraj Singh, he is another inspiration, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Because he had this completely different sensibility, and I didn't know anybody who played drums like that.
Right.
It was alien to me. It's not swing, it's not punk. He said, okay, check out these guys. Mm-hmm. Chris Dale, Jojo Mayer.
Mm-hmm.
So he opened up that world to me. And I was gelling with him, and I was gelling with Bumpy in Kendraka. And I kind of felt that, I have a few things to say as well.
Nice.
So then I decided that, okay, let me try something on my own. Let's see if I can find the right musicians. Maybe I can do like this really loud blues rock fusion kind of a outfit, because I love playing the blues. Mm-hmm. And I love playing rock, and I had, I was getting into this kind of a journey as well with these complexities. So maybe I can do something on my own.
Nice.
Interestingly, what happened in 2011 is that there was this place called Basement, and the curator of that place said that, okay, there's Jimi Hendrix's birthday coming up. So he approached me and said, why don't you do a tribute?
Nice.
That's the kind of music I eat for breakfast.
Quite a hearty breakfast there.
Yeah. I mean, I used to wake up and, while going about my own business, I used to put on a Hendrix tape or something.
Nice.
Yeah, so I was like, I jumped at the opportunity. I said, okay, I'll get hold of a bass player and I'll get hold of a drummer. And he said, why don't you call it Bodhi and Friends? I said, no, that sounds very cheesy. I'll call it the Bodhisattva Trio.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That does sound cheesy. And thank you for not calling it Bodhi. I mean, it could have been worse. It could be Bodhi and Hands, and another popular terminology. I digress.
No, that's very fun. Yeah. So I called it the Bodhisattva Trio, and I approached this bass player called Rohit Mukherjee. He had a good groove. And I called Premjit Datta. Seemed like a very prolific drummer, and he was Monojit Datta's one of his brightest students. Mm. And so we played that gig, and then we realized that we are, especially me and Premjit, we are really connecting musically. I mean, we are it was almost, uncanny and eerie that, he's playing a phrase and I'm anticipating it and playing something. And when I'm playing a lick, he's responding to it. So after that gig, I told him that, why don't we play some original music, because we have such a great chemistry. That's when I started writing some basic melodies, trying to put in whatever information that I have received over the years. So that's how it started. Kind of started like a progressive rock fusion band, actually, with the three of us. So that's how the Bodhisattva Trio started. And
may I butt in for a second?
Sure.
Your earliest compositions and your writing process, you want to take us through that a little? I say that because it'd be a fantastic manner to do a comparative study of, for my listeners, what we're heading towards eventually is Bodhi's current project, which is about to be recorded with an orchestra.
That's right.
Which is like almost like the ultimate endeavor for a composer or arranger. So it'll be very interesting to trace back the roots of your earliest songwriting and compositional process. You want to tell us a little more about that?
Yeah. Definitely, it started as a guitar-based drums trio, like that kind of a thing. Very much, very blues rock oriented. That's how it started. And then I wanted to incorporate these progressive rock elements and experimental elements, like some harmonic complexities, then odd time signatures, rhythmic complexities. So that's how it was still a very loud band back then. And it was not really jazz. It had certain ideas coming from jazz, some harmonic ideas and things like that. But it was very much progressive blues rock kind of a situation. So that's how it started. And obviously we were playing. And what happens to every band, I think, who are really between me and Premjit, and also the next bass player, Tatai, Bijit. What happened between the three of us is that we had a great chemistry, and because we were playing and practicing all of these tunes written by us, we kind of eventually started getting bored. So when we were listening back to our recordings, we were like we were really excited, but 6 months down the line, we were like, no, this is not good. Then we come up with something else, and then again 6 months down the line, no, this is not good. So we continuously kind of did R&D kind of a thing, and I always looked back at when I'm on my own, completely alone. I was always thinking that I used to like it back then, but I don't like it right now. Why don't I like it right now? And so these kind of questions, internal questions kind of drove me to dig deeper and deeper and change, the sound of the band, basically. So from there, slowly more jazz elements started coming in. A huge influence of mine is Wayne Krantz for that.
Yeah, I love that guy.
Because, and so when I heard his trio, I was amazed at that way that he carried this aggressive kind of rock kind of vibe with him. But the complexity and the philosophy is so deep.
Yeah.
So I started really studying Wayne Krantz in detail. People like Wayne Krantz and I think Alan Holdsworth and Mike Stern. I can't, play anything that Alan Holdsworth.
No, these are the masters. I am curious, though, in the beginning, could you tell us a little more about your melodic, harmonic, and rhythmic influences? Because I feel like there are quite a few, there's quite an eclectic mix of influences that come together.
Yeah, actually quite a bit. So as, and right now, before that, I must say that, right now the sound is completely different because we don't have a bass player.
Yeah.
We have a pianist right now.
Yeah, right.
Who's playing synth bass.
Right.
So that's when I started studying things like Mark Juliana and Jojo Mears Noor, things like that.
Nice.
So those influences also came in. So as far as melodic things are concerned, I'm very obviously inspired by David Gilmour because I think his sense of melody is unparalleled.
Yeah.
His guitar literally sings.
Hard relate. Yeah, one of my favorite musicians ever.
Absolutely. I'm a huge fan of Vilayat Khan, actually. Legendary sitar player. Then I'm a fan of people like John Scofield as guitar players, Wayne Krantz, so that kind of thing. I'm a huge fan of saxophone players. Like my favorite saxophone player and a huge inspiration behind the outlook of music has to be John Coltrane. So that is there. I listen to a lot of piano, definitely. I love Bill Evans, Keith Jarrett, and as far as fusion stuff and funk fusion and that, first time I heard Headhunters by Herbie Hancock, my mind was blown. So I wanted to dig deeper into that.
Do you have a specific approach in amalgamating these harmonic influences onto the melodic influences? Because, one could tend to think that the sources of these influences are very different.
Very different.
I ask because it's one of the most interesting things for me to observe in the Indian musical landscape, the contemporary landscape, that there's still it's very much a work in progress.
It is.
Again, I think our generation has a privilege of being part of a time where these two worlds were still vastly separate. I mean, and they still are, but the gap isn't as huge. There was a universe of melody which had never met an entirely different universe of harmony for like generations.
That's right.
I'd like to think we are the first generation, at least from South Asia, who are getting to witness the beginnings of a coming together of these two universes.
That's true. Our generation, I think, is very fortunate that way.
I would agree, yes. To be fair, there have been sincere attempts in the past as well, but for whatever reason, I think for circumstances or the lack of infrastructure or understanding of certain nuances, I mean, that's probably material for an entirely different episode. But focusing on yours, what are your tools to bring these two universes together?
Oh, that's a very interesting question, and I really don't have an answer for that. But what I can tell you is my composing process.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think that will explain. Because when I compose a piece of music, I don't pick up an instrument. I don't do it with my guitar or piano or anything.
Beautiful.
What I do is I just think about it. And the first thing that comes into my mind is the concept behind the composition, the mood, the feeling.
Nice.
What it's about, first and foremost. So when that is about, obviously it channels a certain kind of emotion, be it sadness or anxiety, anger, pain, gratitude, you name it, happiness, whatever. Mm-hmm. So what kind of a groove am I hearing on this mood? Mm-hmm. Technically speaking, the rhythm comes first. So, okay, am I hearing this kind of a slow funk kind of a groove on 4/4, and am I hearing a really busy bebop or a tintal or jhapta or whatever? What kind of a groove? What is the time signature that? Mm-hmm. And I try to imagine a kind of bass line or any kind of bass elements that could be a bass guitar. Right now, it's a synth bass. So obviously I force myself to think like that, or a piano or things like that. So the groove the rhythmic element kind of takes shape in my mind. And then over that rhythm, I try to think about a melody which will kind of reflect exactly what I'm feeling. Mm. So when that is done, when I like a kind of a basic skeleton of a melody, I record voice notes on my phone. Mm-hmm. Now it could be anything. It could be a melody borrowed from John Coltrane, it could be a melody borrowed from David Gilmour. It could be anything. And the groove could be also anything that I'm feeling particularly. And when I've done that, maybe the next day I listen back to the voice recording. I do a basic, very rudimentary drum programming on my computer. And I record the guitar on top of that with the melody.
I'm confused though when you say a borrowed melody from Coltrane or Gilmour. Do you mean like a melody inspired by their approaches or...
No, inspired by. I mean, the way these guys would think.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
And then kind of think about it. I record it and listen back, and I think that, okay, what should be the harmonic approach for this? Because that's a very integral part of this. If it's sad, then I have to choose a particular set of chords or a chord progression. And if it's like very twisted, then, maybe bring out very complex and atonal stuff. And see what fits, what does justice to the melody itself. And after that, when I have a skeleton of the idea of the rhythm and the melody and the harmony, then I call the band.
Nice.
And so then we have the rehearsal, and then I get their ideas in as well, and we record the first rehearsal on my phone. And then again, without an instrument, I'm just sitting on my own and listening to the recording, and then again coming up with another fresh set of ideas on how to treat this composition. So what happens to me is actually whatever plays in my head is obviously because no music is truly original. We've all heard something somewhere. So whatever clicks with that particular sense of emotion has to be somewhere in my library, somewhere. So I have to just pick up the right book. That's how I think these worlds are coming together. I don't really make a conscious effort of doing fusion.
That's a very troublesome word.
Yeah.
It's interesting how you say no music is truly original, and I agree with you in principle. It can be a tricky sentiment to navigate, though. I'm guessing, and correct me if I'm wrong, what you're trying to get is, we can't reinvent a wheel, and the languages are already there. We can't reinvent the language, but
exactly.
I'd like to think, the expressions we're aiming to put out there using that language will be original.
Absolutely. I think I couldn't have said it better than what you just said.
Yeah, I did want to clarify that because I wouldn't want my listeners to think that you don't think your music is not original. That is not the feeling I would.
No, obviously. I mean, obviously, like we are speaking in English.
Exactly.
You know, this language is there. What I am speaking is up to me.
Right, and we can't reinvent the vocabulary.
So that's what I meant when I said that no music is original, because you are borrowing, tools. If I'm playing a D minor chord, that's somewhere
exactly.
done it. So things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. But how I play the D minor chord and what happens before that and after that, that's original.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. I did want to. It's a complex age we're living in, where words can be taken out of context so easily at the drop of a hat.
That's true.
I did want to make sure that we clarified that. All right, man. True. So, and now we're kind of focusing in on the most interesting part of this journey. Before we move on to your current project,
right?
To start off with, you're signed to a label in Europe, in Croatia.
That's right.
I'd like to ask you how that journey's been, number one, and secondly, how you've been received in Europe. I do keep up with some of your social media feed, and it's interesting how well your music has been received in Europe. I'd like to think it's also the beginning of a new time where stereotypical presumptions on what an Indian band is supposed to sound like are being broken, and your band is playing its role in that movement. So I threw a lot of information at you right now, but you want to elaborate on the overall vibe I'm aiming at with this?
Yeah, exactly. I understand what you're saying, and it's a long answer, but I'll try to keep it short.
No. You don't have to keep it short. Just speak your minds. This is your show.
So what happened? I have to go back to 2011. During our first Kendra tour where we played together. So, after Switzerland, after playing these 4 gigs at Bird's Eye Jazz Club, we went to Croatia. And we went to Rijeka, in fact. And I met this really awesome guy called Sonir Sardoch, who used to run this place called Jazz Tunnel. We had a great gig, and this guy is truly awesome. I mean, one of the most wonderful human beings I've met. And we connected and we became friends. We exchanged numbers and things like that. And came back home, obviously. And then, like I said in today's episode itself about how the trio started, how we are challenging ourselves. And then we said that, okay, before, I think that, I told the guys, I think that the kind of territory we are tapping into might work in Europe. Because that kind of, the demographics and the way people think is a little similar, I think, to the music that we are writing. I think we will be received well, so let's go. So that's how it all started. Our first tour, we literally treated it like a vacation, and we went spending our own money and played 5 gigs, only 5 gigs. 1 in France, 2 in Croatia, and 1 in Slovenia. So before that, I wrote to this guy, Sonir Sardoch, and he said, yeah, sure, you can come to Rijeka and play 2 concerts. So we did. That was okay. That was a decent enough tour. But I came back, then we again went in 2017, where it was much, the sound had evolved. And we applied for a festival in Lithuania, in Vilnius, the Vilnius Mama Jazz Festival. And they heard our music and they said, okay, you guys are on.
Nice.
And we did some gigs in Poland. I have 2 concerts in Poland, 1 in Poznan, 1 in Gdansk, 1 in Berlin, in Germany, and again 2 concerts in Croatia. So that was the second time we went to Croatia. And that happened, and it was, we were received quite well. That was a pretty interesting and nice tour for us in November 2017. We came back and there was a lineup change. Our bass player had to leave. He wanted to pursue a different direction. And we brought in Shonai, this amazing pianist. And we made a conscious decision that, okay, let's not have another bass player, because I want to really move out of the rock sound a little bit, like the electric bass, kind of like a very grounded sound. I wanted to keep it a little more open and floaty, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we brought in this guy, Shonai, who was playing synth bass, and automatically like that, sound of the band changed.
Yeah, just as an entirely different bed of possibilities.
Exactly. And it completely changed like 180 degrees. And then it became more jazz, definitely. We were starting to include more jazz elements, more harmonic elements, more jazz sensibilities as far as swing and things like that are concerned. Cadences, swing, this kind of things. And also this electronic influence was there. This, what can I say? Things like, Mark Juliana, Jojo Mayer, that kind of a sensibility was also creeping in with the inclusion of the synth bass. So we recorded the album, and immediately after recording it, even before the mix, I had decided that, this is not going to work in India. This is definitely not going to work in India.
Why do you say that? I hear a lot of contemporary indie musicians saying this. You want to tell us why would you think it won't work in India? I'm curious.
Yeah, it's a good question, in fact. And I remember this conversation that we had a while back, I think, about this word called virtuosity.
Right. Oh, I hear you already. I think I know where this is headed.
Yeah, so I think that's why it's not going to work in India, because we are not flexing our chops over here.
Gotcha.
We are actually more concentrated on the design, the soundscape, and the philosophy rather than fast licks and mind-blowing, wow. I mean, that's great. That's great. Obviously, that's great.
So zeitgeist relevant music.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why an Indian audience somehow, I think, is not ready for that kind of a headspace.
It kind of winds back to the patriarchal nature of Indian society, which is still very much hung up on a very old paradigm of testosterone music, really. It's which is very funny because there's also this deep, ancient, 1,000-year-old plus traditions of arts which have their roots in more feminine energies. But I have the feeling that anytime the whole idea of Western music comes in, it's like looked upon as the masculine counterbalance to the very feminine roots in Indian arts. I don't know, maybe this is me, my projection.
Yeah, but that's a great point of view. I mean, I'll keep this in mind. It's a very interesting way of looking at it, actually. I never thought about it like this.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That actually makes a lot of sense. It's interesting. I had a very similar conversation with Adam Gregg a couple of weeks back.
Right.
The director of the KMMC Conservatory in Chennai.
Wow.
And it's still quite... honestly, I would be lying if I said I know exactly... I mean, honestly, it's kind of shocking for me exactly how hung up people still are on a very, very dated idea of virtuosity. But hearing it from the horse's mouth, from someone like legit 100% homegrown global musician like you, just kind of helps me understand that a lot better.
Yeah, I'm glad that you understand exactly what I said. That's what exactly. So that kind of prompted me to think that we have to sign with an overseas label, preferably, European, because we've been there twice. So I started shooting all these emails. One, I got a few responses saying that, this is what we have to offer. We are not really a record label, more of a booking agency or a production house, things like that. And my good friend, whom I talked about, Sonid from Rijeka, he connected me with these guys in Tech Music from Koprivnica, which is a little off from Zagreb. And we connected. I sent them the unmixed material, and they liked it so much and said that, wow, we haven't heard anything like this before. We'll definitely sign you up.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's how we kind of got the deal, and they signed us up, and they really helped us with the mastering and the promotion and publication and things like that. And of course, they also booked us for around 10 concerts in Slovenia and Croatia in 2019. So that was, I think, the best time of the band so far.
How did that feel, man? I mean, this was a pretty big deal, I would like to think. I mean, making that breakthrough from playing the circuits you were, catering to the somewhat dated stereotypical ideas of what Indian contemporary music is supposed to sound like, and then making this huge leap forward. How did that feel? Now, have you actually taken a minute to contemplate on what a big deal that is, one, and how that feels?
I didn't think about it like it was a big deal, first of all, but what it felt was something extremely special, in the sense that you have this thing in the West where you have presumptions about what a band from India can sound like.
Indeed.
Yeah, so that's where I think that's where I felt really good that we were actually kind of successfully breaking stereotypes about what an Indian band can go through. A very interesting anecdote is when we were driving from this beautiful place called Bovec in the Slovenian Alps, we had a manager. We had a tour manager in Slovenia called Darko. So he drove us, to and from Ljubljana, and he was basically a manager. And on the drive back, I said that, in 2020, we are definitely going to be back. So we didn't, obviously, because of the pandemic. So he said that, it's great. I love your music. And we had played this amazing festival called Festival Lent in Maribor, where we played at this amphitheater, and it was quite a surreal experience, in fact. So that was great. So, and I asked him that, okay, like we played at this festival this year, what are the other festivals that we can play in 2020? He said that, I love your music, but it's going to be very difficult to book you guys. I said, why? Because, you're a band from India, so people will expect, things from Indian classical music or tabla or a traditional instrument.
Yeah.
So I asked him that if you're getting a band from Tokyo, would you expect them to have traditional Japanese instruments? And he said, no.
Yeah, that's a legit question.
So I said, would you expect them? Would you, if it's a bebop outfit, a quartet or a quintet from Tokyo, will you be asking the same question? Then he said, no, I won't. So I said, there you go. So why are you asking an Indian band whether they can have traditional? And then he said, it's probably because we are conditioned like that because of, people like Ravi Shankar and Zakir Hussain.
Yeah.
That's that's great. That's amazing. They are my heroes.
Yeah.
But I want to get out of this whole thing, which is like labeling India as these guys can only do their traditional music. They're not good at rock or they're not good at jazz. Yeah. So I wanted to break this kind of tradition, and that kind of felt really great on our last tour.
Yeah, right there with you, man. I mean, it's a challenge I've dealt with most of my musical career.
Absolutely. I mean, in your career, I can totally imagine.
It's, it wouldn't be fair to put us in the same box for the simple reason the set of challenges are slightly different for someone who's European of Indian ancestry, because there are a different set of pros and cons. There are certain privileges I also get to enjoy as a result, but there are also additional challenges. I'm accepted, I have an equal level of struggles both in the motherland and in my passport countries, continent, sorry. So it wouldn't be fair to compare the challenges. But then again, the kind of infrastructural challenges homegrown musicians like you deal with, I don't know, paperwork, visas, economics, that's again a whole different league of things. I mean, we haven't even gone there yet. I mean, that's a whole, again, probably material for an entire series of podcasts. But before we go down that rabbit hole, this is a good time to focus in on your current project, which is the most ambitious and adventurous endeavor not just you guys, but anyone from India has done for a while as an independent contemporary jazz/fusion trio from India. So tell us more.
So what happened is that, obviously, we didn't go back in 2020, and in 2021 things got worse with the second wave, and obviously we had to sit out again. So we decided, and in the meantime, so what happened, obviously, we started writing newer music. We've got bored once again of our previous album. Mm-hmm. And this time, conceptually, we kind of moved a little away. The last album was the Grey album. It was about humanity. Mm-hmm. So the concept of the album, let me just explain it in a nutshell. We are, interacting with the forces of the cosmos. And so it had to be a two-way process, which is why I heard that, okay, this needs to have a big sound. And I was hearing cinematic ideas and orchestral ideas. So the trio is the human presence and the orchestra is the cosmic forces. But we needed a contemporary orchestra, like a jazz orchestra, people who do experimental stuff. And I contacted our record labels, because there are some incredible musicians that I met in Croatia. Mm-hmm. And our record label, I made, we are very good friends right now. This guy called Marin, who's an excellent music producer and pianist. And I asked him, he said, okay, I'll get you in touch with this guy called Mark Murtic, who's like a very critically acclaimed composer and arranger. He's very busy. He's kind of, he's Croatian, but, he worked extensively in London as well as in Canada. And he has this ensemble called Mimika Orchestra, which is a 20-piece orchestra with an extensive horn section, which is really interesting. I mean, Till, you must check them out. They're great.
Yeah, I intend to. Can you help me out with the name of the orchestra, please?
Yeah, it's a Mimika Orchestra, Mimika.
Which is not just any regular orchestra. They're an alternative, progressive art music orchestra based in London. Oh no, sorry, based in Croatia, but formed in London.
Based in Zagreb, yeah. Formed in London, that's right.
There are so many universes coming together here. It's just the fact that, this is not just some regular orchestra. The orchestra in themselves are very experimental. And now, then there's you folks who are also very experimental, breaking stereotypes. And now, the two of you are merging forces. This is pretty mammoth, even on from a sociocultural lens. Additionally, there's also the mechanics of writing for orchestra or arranging orchestra for the kind of music you folks are doing. You say the inspiration, the seed behind the inspiration of collaborating with an orchestra was this cosmic scale, and you wanted that whole complete spectrum of sound.
That's right.
What's the process like?
No, I first just sent him some rehearsal recordings and our previous album.
Nice.
And so that he knows that, what we are about, what kind of a sound. And then he liked it. He said, yeah, this is good. And I sent him the concept that, okay, this is the thing. And these are the compositions. I mean, half the tunes now are written, but when I first got in touch with him, some of the tunes were not written. So he said, okay, I think what you do is you just, do your own thing and send me the scores of the heads. And whatever recordings that you can get, rehearsal recordings, whatever. So right now we are in that process. So what he is going to do is that he is going to take all these compositions and he will do his own take on it, and then we will decide, okay, maybe this part, this solo section, take out the guitar, take out this, and introduce the horns over there, introduce the strings over there. That doesn't work, this works, things like that.
What's the recording process going to be like? Are you folks going to be recording in India and then having the orchestra record over there, over the recordings?
So what the plan is that we do our homework ourselves, the three of us, and Mark, he does his homework and then he rehearses with his orchestra and we keep exchanging notes and ideas. And then we land up in Zagreb and we rehearse continuously for 4 days together.
Nice.
We do 4 extensive rehearsals and then we go to the studio where we all record I think 23 musicians together live.
Amazing.
For 2 days, 1 day setup and 2 days of recording. And that's it. That's what you get.
Legit as fuck, people. This is definitely a project you want to go support. I gotta say, I mean, and this is an observation, mind you, not a judgment. You're in the manner in which you get what's the right word? The synapse of your concept, the synopsis, sorry. It tends to come across as very dystopian in the beginning on the surface, but from what you say, it actually is a work of hope.
I mean, it is kind of a work of hope. No matter what happens, people who have my close friends and family, they think of me as a person who only sees the negative, who's very depressed and down.
Oh, tell us more about that. Is that something you agree with?
I don't know. I mean, I don't see life as a very fun thing to do. That's for sure. I think it's full of challenges, full of hardship, pain. It's not a very nice place. But at the same time, there is such a powerful concept called love, which we can experience, and we should be grateful for that. I think, and with all this happening around us, and with extremely polarized views, international tensions at its peak right now, and in India, it's a mess. With the communal and religious and political aspects all coming together, things like that. So it's not a very pretty place, but at the same time, I do believe in humanity, and I do believe that we are better than this. So in a way, I am not very pessimistic. I would say I would call myself as a realist. I understand the reality of things, and I do hope for better times because I do believe in rise and fall and the law of averages. Everything can't be bad all the time. Everything can't be good all the time either. There is a flow of balance that we have to go through. I think I can summarize my beliefs in that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, generally speaking, just to clarify, I wouldn't want to overstep boundaries, but I do find, I mean, the artistic vision behind this and understanding the roots behind it, are fascinating. Because honestly, it sounds contradictory because you talk about the challenges in life being a general path of hardship, and yet here you are making some, your actions prove that wrong. Because you're actually doing one of the most positive things people could do. A lot of so-called optimists would be sitting at home on their asses doing nothing about their lives. And then yet you are embarking on this super, really challenging endeavor, which is actually probably one of the first. This is kind of history in the making. No independent band has attempted to do what you folks are about to do. And your actions are as optimistic as it gets, and they kind of And I can only say this is an observation, not a judgment.
No, that's a great observation. I'm very thankful that you're telling me this. It makes me feel good.
I appreciate that. That's the idea. It's. I think, and also artists are a sensitive bunch. They're affected by their circumstances to a degree, which is
we are, definitely. We are.
And it affects artists differently than it would a lot of others whose lives don't revolve around understanding the more sensitive nuances of life. And I think it's understanding the pain of an artist is not always an easy thing to do. And the lack of understanding can also kind of start in a circle of pain, which can be interpreted as pessimism, when looked at from a specific lens. So, it's artists are also, especially musicians. We chose music as our primary mode of expression because not all of us are great with words. I mean, I know I started off playing music because I didn't want to speak. I prefer playing an instrument. I hated talking. It's like I felt like no one understood what I said anyway, so I might as well just shut up and sing a song instead.
You know what? You're absolutely right. I mean, I think like that as well. It's useless. It's useless trying to speak and express. Personally. So let's just play.
I know, right? So, and except then adult life happens and you realize that you can't really hide behind your instrument all your life. So then that part of growing up happens. And here we are talking about it. 10 years ago, if someone said I was curating a podcast, I'd be like, yeah, that's a joke. Point being that this is a remarkable project you guys have embarked upon. It's a remarkable journey you have taken upon yourself. I've had the honor of observing your journey for over a decade now at this point. So for upcoming younger generations of artists, I make you sound old, which you're not, but there is another generation already who are in their formative stages. There is. What are your words of advice? How do you recommend they go about realizing their dreams, dystopian or utopian?
It comes down to one thing. I think it's self-belief and self-evaluation. I think that's the most important thing. Be honest. My advice is be honest to yourself. Because if you're dishonest and you want to take shortcuts and think that, okay, I've made it in life or whatever, I have so many gigs, so much X amount of money, Y amount of views. I mean, that's really not the end, and that's not how you will want to go to sleep. You'll want to go to sleep, washing your face and looking at your mirror and feeling happy about it, that, okay, I am doing justice to this life. I have a purpose. So I think that's the advice, that have and respect your purpose. So that's what I feel that, I feel that. Just do whatever, be honest to the art and craft that you're doing. Do not be bogged down by what other people say and other success stories and think that, oh, I haven't done anything in my life. No, I mean, your best evaluator is yourself. So self-evaluation is very important. And of course, no target is big or unattainable. And do not try to jump steps, because then you won't get there. You take baby steps, take it step by step, and nothing is impossible. That's what.
Sounds like some pretty fucking solid advice to me, man. I would totally second that. So, what's the best way to support you guys at this point? Just FYI, all links to your crowdfunding and your social media will be included on the episode notes. But from the horse's mouth, what's the best way we can come support you?
Apart from, obviously, if the finances are a huge deal, we have a target of 6,000 euros. we are slowly but steadily, we are getting there. And obviously we will get there, but that's how you can support us. Any contribution counts. Any contribution. Even if it is €5, that also makes a huge deal for us. Because we have costs involved, and the more people donate, it will help us to, it'll ease our process basically. It'll make life less difficult for us.
Yeah.
Number one. And number two is that, share the link and listen to our music, share our music. Just share, spread awareness, listen, if you like the music, make your friends listen to the music, not just the trio, but the orchestra also, Mimika Orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
And, and just, I don't know, share the music and recommend it. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the only way. That's the only way. And that's how you can help us. I mean, even if you listen to one song and you share it, it means a lot to us. Really means a lot to us.
Sounds about right. Parting thoughts before we taper off?
Not really. Just the most important thought is that entire humanity, all of us have been through a really tough time for the last 2 years. But we should not lose hope, and we should definitely believe in mankind and in humankind rather, and hope for better days, and not just hope for better days and do nothing, do your part. I think that's what we should be telling ourselves, that let's work together. That's why as a musician, I think I'm pretty blessed to be a musician where we feel these things and we have the ability to love unconditionally. Like if there is a problem, there is a solution. Let's find it.
Makes sense to me. I do have one last question, which I don't ask all my guests, but I think you'd be a good candidate. So if you were in front of a sacred fire and you wanted to burn something away, what would that be?
My bad habits. I would want to, I have some bad habits, obviously, which is derogatory to my health. So I would want to definitely get rid of those. Because I don't have anything to complain about. I have no regrets about the decisions that I've made. It's all part of the journey. But definitely seeing myself grow old, my parents getting older, and new life being born, like my friends, my band members, they have kids right now. I think taking care of our health is a very important aspect. And I think I have not done a good job at that. So I would want to get rid of my habits which are derogatory to my health. Definitely.
Thanks for sharing that. I think that's a very important sentiment to put out there. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I know
about your journey and the way you've really introspected into that, and hats off to you, man, for doing that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's we have, in my belief system, we are dealt with a certain pack of cards for very specific reasons. And at this point, I actually work as a personal trainer, as a counselor.
Yes, I know all the things that you're doing.
So I'm guessing, that set of cards has had to do something with that in one way or the other. But I really appreciate you sharing that. FYI, I'm going to stop recording now. I'm sorry, my endings are very abrupt. Gratitude from the bottom of my heart for listening to the very end. Please consider taking a minute to subscribe to our shows so you know when the next episode is out. This is a labor of love, one I hope snowballs into one that's sustainable in its attempt to support independent thought and authentic relating. While having you as a regular member of our audience is what makes that a realistic prospect. Much love, and talk soon. Just another voice